Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth day of GPAT online class for BPharm students on pharmaceutical analysis. And this is Dr. P. Ramalingam, working as a Director Research, Raghavendra Institute of Pharmaceutical Education Research, affiliated to JNT University, Anandapur, Andhra Pradesh. For today's class, so I'll be dealing about the chromatography and briefly about types and principles, and I'll be more focused on HPLC instrumentation. And so now, let us come for the chromatography. So as on today, you being a BPharm student, you might be knowing about chromatography. Remember, the chromatography is one of the modern separation techniques, and now it's a technique used for three different purposes in pharma industry. Number one is separation. Number two is identification. Number three is quantifications. So now the question is here, you studied spectroscopy and you studied chromatography. Comparatively, which one you feel better? Which is the best technique in pharma industry now? So to conclude their answer, out of spectroscopy and chromatography, now the chromatography is the best techniques to be used in pharma industry. The reason is now the pharma industry is more of concern with the impurities, separation of impurities, identification of impurities, and quantifications, etc. etc. So now the spectroscopy is a one, it can be used for qualitative and quantitative analysis alone. I'm repeating, spectroscopy is a one, can be used for only qualitative and quantitative. But the advantage of chromatography is now, the nowadays the chromatography is linked with different analytical technique, like a chromatography with the UV spectroscopy, chromatography with IR spectroscopy, chromatography with the mass spectroscopy. So likewise, the now it's a hyphenated system has come, where the chromatography principle has been linked to the other technique, where the UV, IR, else mass, NMR, this technique has become part of chromatographic system where they act as a detector. So now, in generally, in case of chromatography, and it is the advantage of chromatography over this spectroscopy is, first any mixture of compound can be subjected to chromatography. First, the mixture of compound is separated, then the separated mixers, I mean the individual components, what you get upon separation, it may be subjected for further identification and quantification. So here the chromatography function nothing but it is to separate, and when the chromatography is linked with other analytical technique like spectroscopy and other etc techniques, so those techniques are used for qualitative and quantitative purpose. The same way here, when you come for chromatography, and broadly they classify into three different types. But in old days, you say only gas chromatography and liquid chromatography. So it's all purely depends on the phases what you use. You know, the basic principle of chromatography is the separation by using stationary phase and mobile phase. The stationary phase nothing but a stable phase. A mobile phase nothing but a moving phase. Mobile phase nothing but a kind of solvent. So here, if you use gas as a mobile phase, that is called as gas chromatography. If you use liquid as mobile phase, it's called as liquid chromatography. That's why here HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography. It means in the HPLC, liquid is used as mobile phase. And the same is similarly, over the period of time, the supercritical fluid chromatography also has become an interest in pharma industry. So because the supercritical fluid is the one, you know that it's having the high efficient solvent which can extract wide range of compound from polar to non-polar. So here now the chromatography is available in the particular system in the pharma industry, or one is gas chromatography where the gas is into the mobile phase, and supercritical fluid chromatography where the supercritical fluid like carbon dioxide can be used as a mobile phase there. The last one is a liquid chromatography. Best example is HPLC. So when you come for this introductory principle, so you know the chromatography is a combination of two words. The meaning is first beginning. The chromo means it's a color. Graphy means representation of something on paper. So here you can see a sample which contains different colors, different samples which are moving to a column, and where these all are separated. So when the different colors are mixed together, it's very difficult to visualize what exactly color. When the colors are separated, we can able to visualize it. So where you're able to present it, what are the different colors mixed with common color. The same way here, and it is a one flow we are showing like a gas chromatography or anything. You can use gas chromatography. And so the gas flow, what is mentioned, nothing but it's a moving phase, it's a mobile phase. And the tube-like structure, cylinder-like structure, nothing but a stable phase is called a stationary phase. So at the end we have detector. The detector, nothing but a device which is based on either spectroscopy principle or fluorimetry or electrochemical method or anything. So that can identify a sample what is coming out of column, and we can have the response based on the detected response. We can also go for quantification. Now if you look at that, you just see, and the mixture of all four colors, one is a blue, yellow, and it's kind of greenish, and another is red. So these all together are separated. So here the separation is based on the affinity towards a column. So here what happened, the red color component, it's moving faster. It means that compound has less affinity towards stationary phase. And when you come for the blue color, the triangle compound, which is retarded in the column, it means not moving at all. It means it's having high affinity towards stationary phase. So here, such a way, the simple example, nothing but how the compounds are separated in chromatography is, it's all based on the affinity of a particular compound towards stationary phase. For example, we have two compounds, A and B, both are structurally different. Definitely, when the compounds are structurally different, their molecular weight is different, polarity is different, solubility different. So, accordingly, what happened based on the polarity, solubility, affinity? So, the compound which has greater affinity towards column, it moves slower than the compound which is having lower affinity towards stationary phase. This is the way how the compounds are separated in between mobile phase and stationary phase. So the particular in the diagram, I mentioned gas flow. So here this picture indicates the gas chromatography. Instead of gas flow, if I mention liquid, it becomes liquid chromatography. If I mention supercritical fluid, it's called a supercritical fluid chromatography. So now, just for your knowledge and how the chromatography has come into the world, it's nothing but chromatography is literally a color writing. And first, it was employed by a Russian scientist who spread in 1993, 1996. And he was working on a pigment, like a plant pigment, chlorophyll, xanthophyls. And in the beginning days, we are used. In the beginning days, we are used to petithium as a mobile phase and calcium carbonate as stationary phase. This was the first solvent mobile phase used was petither, and the calcium carbonate was used as a uh, stationary phase. So here, when the particular plant pigments were passed through this particular tube which contained calcium carbonate, he observed there are different colors like green, orange, yellow, and these colors are coming under different pigments. And then finally, he has just mentioned that it's a separations, and finally, it's a kind of color writing where the pigment is given a different color, have different bands. So finally, he has coined the word. It's called as the chromatography. Actually, the chromatography word is coined by Martin. Is coined by Martin in later, but the first chromatography experiment was done by Sweat. So definition of chromatography, and you all know that the IUPAC, that the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, it's IUPAC is applied for the organic compound nomenclatures. The IUPAC is given definition of chromatography. So as per the IUPAC definition of chromatography is a physical method of separation in which the compounds to be separated are distributed between two phases. The one is a stationary phase while another is moves in a definite directions. That's what here, what is moves in definite direction, the mobile phase, and another is a stationary phase. So here the question nothing but it's a method of the physical method of separation. It is not a chemical method. So a simple questions may come under fundamentally they'll ask chromatography is like what kind of separations, a chemical method or physical method, what method? Chromatography is a physical method of separation. So the stationary phase may be solid or liquid, or the mobile phase may be gas or liquid. So these two combination gives different types of chromatography that we'll see later. So here, what is the purpose of chromatography here? The first one is a mixer, and by using chromatography, we try to separate it. So the mixer is separated in the second phase, and once separation, what we can do is we can analyze. What kind of analysis we can do? One, you can identify, quantify, and purify. So now we are thinking about the objective of chromatography is four. One is separation, number two is identification, number three is purification, next is quantifications. So these are the four different objective chromatography techniques in pharmaceutical industry. So there are glossary, and you should know what are the different definition of that. So what is chromatograph? So the chromatograph, nothing but the instrument employed for a chromatography. So now the HPLC system is called as chromatograph. And eluent, the fluid which is entering into the column is called as eluent. So the solvent which are going to add into the column, and it's called as eluent. Eluate, nothing but later stage. So after the once eluent is entered to the column, it interact with the column and it undergo separation phenomena with the column based on the analyte chemistry. And the eluent, nothing but which is coming out of the column. So the eluent is which is entering into the column. Eluate is which is coming out of the column. Elution, nothing but the process of passing the mobile phase through the column. The way how the mobile phase are passing through the column is called as elution. The flow rate, nothing but is nothing but the rate of flow of the mobile phase into the column. Preferably, the unit for this flow rate is ml per minute. The linear velocity, nothing but distance passed by mobile phase per 1 minute in the column. I think centimeter per minute. That's it. So components of chromatography. So you know what is mobile phase and what is stationary phase. As I told you, mobile phase is a solvent, which is a moving phase in a definite directions. Means unidirections. And mobile phase can be, see, very simple example. Many people, even mobile phase means they are confusing. Mobile means moving. Moving means we have only three state of matter. One is a gas, liquid, solid. The solid cannot be used as a mobile phase. So your gas and liquid can be a mobile phase. And the stationary phase is the part of the apparatus that hold the component. They move through it and separating them. So here the stationary phase, but a phase which is stable. The stationary phase can be a liquid and solid. Gas cannot be a stationary phase. So now, out of three matter, only one matter can be a mobile phase or stationary phase. Liquid is the only one which can act as a mobile phase as well as stationary phase. Whereas gas can act as only mobile phase, whereas solid can act as only stationary phase. So here, as I told you earlier, the objective of chromatography is to separate and analyze, identify, purify, and quantify. You know, analyze nothing but examine a structure, examine a mixer and its component, and you just try to relate one to each other, which is less polar, which is more polar, etc. And identify the chemical nature of the compound, what compound exactly it is, whether it is alkaloid or glycoside or it's a phenol, etc. Purify, nothing but once if any mixer is there, for example, a compound which contains 90% purity. So the meaning of 90% purity, there is a 10% impurity. Now you can use a chromatography to make your 90% purity compound into 100% purity. Quantify, nothing but, so here the quantify is the last stage. So in chromatography, after analyzing, after identifying, after purifying only, you can go for quantification. Remember, quantification should not be done for a mixer. Quantification is the one that should be done for only the pure compound. So hence, and we try to identify, determine the amount of the mixer, and we try to know how much amount of compound present in the given sample. It's called as quantifications. So exactly, if you see the real life example of use of chromatography, you can find pharma company being, it is used in hospital, it is used in law enforcement, it is used in the environmental agency, it is used in manufacturing plants. So now chromatogram. So what is chromatogram thing? But it is a visual output of the chromatograph. What you get here thing like UV spectrum. So they called a spectrum spectra in spectroscopy we call it a spectra spectrum, but here we call it as chromatogram. Chromatograph, as I told, nothing but it's the equipment. Stationary phase, nothing but it's a bound phase, a stable phase, and which is a phase that is covalently bonded to the support particles or to the inside wall of the column tubing. And mobile phase, which moves with a kind of solvent. Analyte, nothing but substance to be separated during chromatography. Elevate, I told you that it's mobile phase leaving the column. Elevate, nothing but mobile phase entering by the column. And next is retention time, nothing but it is a characteristic time it takes for a particular analyte to pass through the system from the column inlet to detector. So here, nothing but it's a time taken by analyte to travel from the entry of the column to the detector. So that time will vary from compound to compound. So it means a compound having a high affinity towards column, the retention time will be high. If a compound is having less affinity towards column, the retention time may be low. So here, retardation factors. What is the retardation factor? So the retardation factor, nothing but it's a fraction of an analyte in the mobile phase of chromatography system, and where it's trying to move uh, along with the mobile phase. So here, nothing but the R is equal to quantity of a substance in mobile phase and total quantity of substance in the system. That is one kind of retardation factor. But the RF value is there. The RF value, when you go for that, that is different, where the RF value is equal to distance traveled by a solute divided by distance traveled by a solvent. But this is only the retardation factor, the fraction of an analyte in the mobile phase of a chromatography system, but the quantity of the substance in mobile phase and total quantity of substance in the system. That's what here. And retardation factor is different. The RF value is different. This formula is very, very important. You may get a calculation from this part. So, for example, and you are given 100 mg of your sample into the column, and you found that only 40 mgs in the mobile phase. Now the retardation factor is nothing but, how much is coming at the quantity of the substance in the mobile phase, nothing but 40 mg divided by 100 mg. That is your retardation factor. So types of chromatography, as I told you that there are liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, paper chromatography, thin layer chromatography, and liquid chromatography, I think, but which separate the liquid sample with a liquid solvent and column composed with a solid bead or stationary phase. Gas chromatography, and it's a separate a vapor sample. For example, liquid chromatography used for separating a sample which are in liquid form. Gas chromatography is the one which is used to separate a compound which are vapor form or gases in form. And paper chromatography also used to separate a dried liquid sample, and the thin layer chromatography also used to separate dry liquid sample. So this slide is very important. You know what is liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, paper chromatography, thin layer. Remember, liquid chromatography can be used for the liquid sample. Gas chromatography can be used for the vaporized or the gaseous sample. Paper is for dried liquid sample. Thin layer also for dried liquid sample. So now I'm coming to this, the separation, that the definition, and we have the other kind of classifications, and this classification of chromatography is very important, the fundamental aspects of your chapter. And you may get at least one question for the classifications and the basic component of types of chromatography. And so, the chromatography, the differential migration of the sample component dissolved in a mobile phase produced by a selective retention by a stationary phase. That's it. That is the other form of definition of the chromatography. It is based on the selective retention by a stationary phase. The selective retention, how it occurs, is only because of your nature of the analyte, nature of the chemical structure. So now the classification chromatography, first you see the chromatography is divided into gas chromatography, liquid chromatography. So this, once again, the gas chromatography, it is based on the stationary phase, and gas is a mobile phase. I told you that the first baseline classification done only based on the mobile phase. So if your stationary phase is gas and liquid, is gas liquid chromatography, and the principle is partition. If it is a solid, it is a gas solid chromatography. It is a principle is once again partition, and you can see that in gas chromatography also the stationary phase may be a bonded liquid. This is a new point you should understand. You know only GLC and GSC. In gas chromatography, sometimes the stationary phase may also bonded liquid, and that gives your adsorption followed by partition principle. And you are not aware of these two combined principle, I think, anywhere. This is for your knowledge. And in case of liquid chromatography, the mobile phase is liquid. The mobile phase liquid, once again, the stationary phase liquid that become partition, HPLC, paper. You can see thing about the partition chromatography. The example of partition chromatography, HPLC, paper. Remember, dear students, and many of students, paper chromatography, what is the principle? And everybody is saying wrong. The paper chromatography is nothing but a partition principle. If your stationary phase is solid, once again adsorption. Once again, the same way like in gas chromatography. If your stationary phase is a bonded liquid, then it's adsorption followed by partition HPLC. If your stationary phase is ion exchange polymer, it is ion exchange chromatography. It's a stationary phase of polymer solid, then it's called polymer solid, nothing but it's become partition. The partition sieving. The partition sieving, nothing but exclusion chromatography. So sometime once again they'll ask you if you are able to, for example, I am asking you, you just put your size exclusion chromatography into partition or adsorption, and it comes under partition. Say partition is called as partition sieving. Okay, so the same way, and it is also another type of classifications. The beginning in the it's a very old classification, and the types of chromatography it is based on the shape. I mean the based on the shape of the stationary phase. One is a planar chromatography, another is a column chromatography. The example for planar chromatography, the planar nothing but is like an open bed is a platelet extra. You know, paper is a planar, and thin layer chromatography thing. Remember, the thin layer chromatography is also called as open bed chromatography. So the column chromatography, we have different types: size exclusion chromatography, ion exchange chromatography, affinity chromatography, reverse phase chromatography, hydrophobic interaction chromatography, and high performance liquid chromatography and gas chromatography. So the number of column chromatography techniques are very high. So here the types of chromatography is different, and the classification of the chromatography method is different. So the classification of chromatography method, it is based on the shape of the chromatographic bed. It is nothing but planar and column. Already given detailed examples above. Next is based on the physical state of the mobile phase and stationary phase. As I told you, gas chromatography, liquid chromatography. In addition, already showed the first slide, the supercritical fluid chromatography also. Based on the mechanism, we have partition mechanism, absorption mechanisms, and it's actually adsorption, not absorption. Adsorption mechanisms and size exclusion mechanisms and affinity mechanism and ion exchange mechanisms. So now these are the basic introduction about your chromatography types, exactly what exactly taking place in the chromatography. Students, I presume that you are aware of column chromatography, you are aware of TLC, you are aware of paper chromatography, and many of you study in your regular curriculum and examinations. So that I think that is whatever things you are reading in your textbook and for your examination, that may be sufficient to face your competitive examination. So, I just want to focus on HPLC. The reason nothing but HPLC is one of the very, very important technique in pharma industry, and every student should know basic fundamental of this HPLC. What is HPLC, where it is used, how it works, and how to interpret, how to handle. So remember, many people thinking that HPLC is a part and parcel of pharmaceutical analysis. Never, never. It is HPLC is the basic fundamental equipment used in many departments, including pharmaceutical formulations. They used in chemistry, pharmacochemistry purification. They use in pharmacology also. And so, with respect to the discipline, each and every student should have the basic knowledge on HPLC, how it works, and how to operate. What are the precautions to be taken? How to interpret? How to quantify? These are the fundamental things every student should be aware of it. So don't think that HPLC is a part of pharmaceutical analysis. So the HPLC, I go for introduction. Initially it was referred as a high pressure liquid chromatography. It was referred as a high pressure liquid chromatography, and it is high pressure applied using pumping system. Mean how the high pressure chromatography has come into the picture, nothing but means, and where the mobile phase are pumped into the column by using the high pressure pump. So this pressure works by the forcing the mobile phase through at much higher rate, increase the resolution power. So here what happened in case of the column chromatography, generally what we do is a column tube will be there and stationary wave will be packed into the column. Then we add mobile phase at the top of the column. So this mobile phase pass through the column through gravity. So we don't apply any force. The pressure which is fall in the column is only the gravity. So here what happened, basically the resolution is very, very poor in the conventional column chromatography, what is studied. So in case of HPLC, we try to force the mobile phase into the column. It means we try to flush the mobile phase into the column with a high pressure. So that what happened, this resolution power, the resolution means nothing but the compound able to separate completely without mixing. It is called as resolution power. So here the first advantage of this HPLC thing, but the way the capacity of the separation, nothing but the resolution power is very high when compared to conventional chromatography. The reason is we are trying to use high pressure to flush the mobile phase into the column. So due to the high efficiency, the performance, the pressure liquid chromatography is now it is referred as high performance liquid chromatography. So now the exact name is because of the high pressure in the column, the performance is very good. So that and exactly the HPLC is called as high performance liquid chromatography, and we also have other name nothing but high price liquid chromatography because the cost of the HPLCs it vary from 10 to 20 lakhs depends upon the configurations. Minimum 10 lakhs you have to put and it goes up to even 20-25 lakhs depends on the configuration and automation. So where and all we use HPLC? First, where and all we use HPLC and why we use HPLC? I mean nothing but what are the various advantages of this HPLC and that made us to use in pharma industry. So number one is we use in simultaneous analysis. Number two is the reason is we can use in simultaneous analysis. What is the meaning of simultaneous analysis? Simultaneous analysis is nothing but is analysis of a 2 or 3 compound at a time. So here there are two kind of analysis you should know. One is a single compound analysis, another is a multi-compound analysis. You take a paracetamol tablet. The paracetamol tablet contains only one drug, paracetamol. So now what you can do, you can prepare a sample, you grind it, powder it, extract it, take the sample, inject or analyze it. Only one analyte is there. It is called a single component analysis. But the same in the market, you may find FDC, fixed dose combinations. I mean, in the same market, you will find paracetamol as well as aceclomid together. So now you take a tablet, a single tablet, which contains paracetamol as well as aceclomid in it. You powder it, extract it. So whatever the solution you get, the solution contains both the drug, paracetamol and aceclomid. So now that that's a mixer. That's a mixer. Now the question is, the spectroscopy cannot be used to analyze it accurately. Remember that even the UV spectroscopy can be used to analyze a two compound simultaneously, but without separations. But the accuracy is very, very less in case of spectroscopy. But in case of HPLC chromatography, now this mixture of both, I mean the tablet solution which contains two drugs, can be injected into the column. It will be separated. It will be separated, well separated. So the well separated only we called as high resolution. Once well separated, and each separated compound can be quantified, identified perfectly. That's why called as high resolution and quantification. So this is a way the phenomena where the HPLC can be used for simultaneous analysis of 2 or 3 compound at a time. Even 4 compound mixer you can inject into the HPLC system. All the 4 compound will be separated into separate peaks. So each peaks represent one drug. So based on the peak characteristics, you can able to identify, you can able to quantify. So it's called a simultaneous analysis. So high resolution, nothing but able to separate a compound. It's kind of well separation, baseline separation. So high resolution, nothing but baseline separations. And high sensitive, nothing but and this particular HPL system able to detect a compound at a very low concentration. Even nanogram per ml can be detected. UV it is not possible. In spectroscopy, it's not possible to detect nanogram per ml, but HPLC, and where you can able to detect even if your concentration is 10 nanogram per ml also, it is possible to detect. And good repeatability, nothing but reproducibility, and moderate analyze conditions. So the condition to handle HPLCs, and we don't require to have very stringent, but we require a minimum air conditioning and environment to handle the HPLC, and to make the HPL system a rugged one, and easy to fractionate and purify, and it's not destructive. So here the HPL system, as I told you, is not destructive, because either destructive or not destructive, it depends on the detector. Remember. So if you are LCMS, in LCMS, so LCMS separation is not a destructive. The detector, the one that determine your analysis is destructive or not destructive. If you use UV detector, it is not destructive. But if you use mass detector, the mass detector is a destructive technique. So now the types of liquid chromatography in that, and this slide shows you what are the various packing material mobile phase can be used here. And now let us come for this normal phase chromatography. The packing material is silica gel. In silica gel is mobile phases. See, remember in chromatography and polar and non-polar. If your stationary phase is polar, your mobile phase should be non-polar. So here, normal phase chromatography, your stationary phase is polar, silica gel. Gel means what? Water absorbing. Okay, OH. And when case of a mobile phase, NXA is nothing but here, it's a kind of your non-polar solvent. So the normal phase chromatography, the principle is its adsorption principle. In reverse phase chromatography, you can see silica C18 ODS, C18 column. The C18 is nothing but carbon chain is meant for non-polar nature. So when the reverse chromatography, the packing material becomes, see, it's reverse to normal phase, non-polar. So finally the mobile phase becomes polar in nature, methanol and water. The interaction is hydrophobic, nothing but a kind of partition. And size exclusion chromatography, the packing material is porous polymer, and the mobile phase is tetrahydrofuran, THF, and the interaction is a gel permeation. In ion exchange chromatography, it's ion exchange gel, and mobile phase is buffer solution, and interaction is ion exchange. In affinity chromatography, it's a packing with the ligand, and where the buffer is a solution. Remember, in ion exchange as well affinity, the buffers are used. The interaction is affinity. So only thing is that what is the basic difference between ion exchange chromatography and affinity chromatography? In ion exchange chromatography, we use ion exchange resins, and in affinity chromatography, it is packing with the ligands. So here the separation mode, for example, first you should understand the fundamental of what is polar compound and non-polar compound. The water is a polar compound and methane is a non-polar compound. Why water is a polar compound? It hydrogen, oxygen. Oxygen acts as a negative pole and hydrogen acts as a positive pole. In non-polar methane, such thing is not there. So here in case of polar compound, the why it's called as polar compound, the bond particular compound, the bonding electron is not shared evenly. Okay, so it means that a bond, the bond which is existing between oxygen and the hydrogen. So oxygen will have the high density electron, where hydrogen will have low density electron. That's why called as oxygen is a negative pole and hydrogen is a positive pole. Okay. So here the polar compounds are generally they are soluble in water. It means the polar compounds are soluble in polar solvent. Non-polar compounds are soluble in non-polar compound. So that is very simple, basic fundamental phenomena thing. But so it's all the solubility for a compound comes from a bond. That's it. Yep. If a bond electron is equally shared, then automatically it is a non-polar. If a bond electron is not equally shared, as is shown in water molecule, oxygen having high dense electron and hydrogen having low dense electron, then the bond is polarized, automatically can be able to interact with the polar solvents. So in normal phase chromatography, as I told you that stationary phase is polar in nature, and example is silica, silica SiO2 or alumina Al2O2. Mobile phase is non-polar nature. As I told you, when a stationary phase is polar in nature, and mobile phase will be a non-polar in nature. Mobile phase would be non-polar in nature. And in case of your non-polar nature means heptane, hexane, cyclohexane, chloroform, and the methanol is wrong here. It's not methanol. And sometimes the mixture of methanol with this, sometimes they use it to modify the particular non-polar mobile phase. That's why they mentioned methanol. Methanol and chloroform, they may use as a mixer again. So the basic mechanism of the normal phase chromatography, nothing but basically a stationary phase is polar in nature. So automatically polar compound will have polar interaction. So the polar compound travels slower and elucidates slowly due to the high affinity to stationary phase. So non-polar compound, obviously what happened here in the normal phase chromatography, mobile phase is non-polar nature. So non-polar compound will have higher solubility in non-polar solvents. So automatically, so when the compound is more soluble in non-polar solvent, automatically shows less affinity towards the stationary phase and it eludes first. So, but this normal phase chromatography it is not widely used in pharmaceutical separations. Okay, this is a simple example. This packing material how it appears. The surface of silica gel how it appears in but silicon plus OH. So this OH is act as polar groups which can have hydrogen bonding with the compounds. So it's called as polar interactions. That's why here the mechanism how the compound the polar normal phase chromatography where the silica gel, the surface silica gel, you have silicon with so many OH groups. These OH groups are polar nature. That's why that silica gel is a polar in nature. And this is a way how your compound forms a bond. So here you can see and these interactions, right? This is a like you can see here. This is a stationary phase. This is analyte. And this one compound it's called as orthonitroaniline, and the paranitroaniline, paranitro compound. So here is just see when a compound, these two compounds are how separated. You can see these two compounds. Orthonitroaniline is a paranitroaniline. When these two compounds are in ortho position, when this analyte is moving into the column, so as it ortho position, you can see that this OH, the first OH forms a strong bond, hydrogen bond with NH2 group. Another compound forms hydrogen bond with OH group. But when this orthonitro aniline is in the para position, automatically it forms only one bond. So automatically what happened when compared to para-nitroaniline, this orthonitroaniline having a high affinity because of the high polar nature, it can able to form more number of bonds with the interaction. So this compound is having more affinity, where this compound is having less affinity. So accordingly, what happened? So benzene, there is no polar group. It cannot form any hydrogen bonding with the nature. So the benzene elude first. Next is nitro compound. Next is amine compound. Next is paranitroaniline. Next is orthonitroaniline. This is the way how a compound is separated in the normal phase chromatography. So remember that the one of the major advantage of this normal phase chromatography, the isomers, ortho, para, meta isomers of this particular compound can also be separated. In normal phase chromatography, what are the various mobile phase used? Normal phase chromatography is stationary phase is polar nature. By default, when you come for a mobile phase, it should be it should be like a non-polar nature. Though more commonly, we go for the polarity nature. First, you have to use a low polar solvent, N-hexane, isooctane, chloroform, dichloromethane, ethyl acetate, isopropyl alcohol, tetrahydrofuran, dioxane, and followed by these are the polar mobile phase, acetonitrile, ethanol, methanol, amine acid. They are highly polar in nature. This cannot be used alone in normal phase chromatography. Remember, though I mentioned this acetonitrile, ethanol, methanol, amine acid, it cannot be used alone in the particular normal phase chromatography. It can be part of the other solvent. Maybe methanol can be mixed with the chloroform, and ethyl acetate can be mixed with the chloroform, or like it should be part of this particular the dichloromethane and methanol. Dichloromethane and acetonitrile. So some kind of things to alter the elution power. This polar solvent may be added in some proportion to your non-polar solvent in normal phase chromatography. Practically, I am speaking. Now let us come for the reverse phase. The reverse phase is nothing but reverse to the normal phase chromatography. So normal phase chromatography, stationary phase is polar nature. In reverse phase, the stationary phase is non-polar nature. Best example is N-octal decyl, N-alkyl, ethyl, phenyldiol, and hydrophobic polymers. These are the different type of stationary phase can be used in the reverse phase chromatography as stationary phase. Mobile phase should be polar in nature. More commonly, we use methanol, acetonitrile water, or buffers, and with additives of THF or dioxanil that is also used here. The mechanism here, you know that as your stationary phase is non-polar nature, only non-polar compound will retain longer time. So automatically, yeah, mobile phase is polar in nature. The polar compound will travel fast. Polar compound will travel fast, whereas non-polar compound travels slower. That's it. So in case of reversed phase chromatography, the interaction is hydrophobic interaction. Remember, it's a kind of physical interaction. Once again, the question may come in reverse chromatography. What interactions do you find? It's a hydrophobic interaction, nothing but physical. It's a kind of it could be a partition. If the column is a C18 C8 column, it is a partitions. So these are the some example. Packing material is not non-polar. More commonly, polymer can be used, or you can call as a C18 column, C8 column. C18, C8 column are called as bonded. You can see the silica and C8 is attached at the bond, and silica and C8 is the bond, so that called as bonded columns. So this is some kind of example that how a particular ODS column, that is C18 column appears to be. You can see that, and this is a supporting silica. This silica is linked with what you call as is a dimethyl cell oxyl group, and this is linked with harmonic carbon 2 is called as 2. Sorry, C. CH2 is a trimethyl cell oxy compound. 16 plus 17 and 18. So it called as the C18 column, and where it's a 1, 2, 18 column. So this is something about how this C18 chain, this is C18 chain, this is the C18 chain. The C18 chain is bonded with the cyryl oxy. So here I just wanted to say this particular chain, the C18 chain, it is a base for providing the hydrophobic interaction with the nonpolar compound. So as I told you, in reverse phase chromatography, the C18 is it. The C18 is hydrophobic nature. It can have interact to more intensely with the nonpolar compound. So remember once again, and this particular bonded C8 column or C18 column, and basically they are all pH sensitive. So you cannot use a strong acid or a strong acid. So the most commonly the suitable pH for this particular C18 and C8 column are only pH 3 to 7. You cannot use a pH less than 3. You cannot use pH more than 7, because especially this particular bonded column C18 column, C8 column are very sensitive to the basic pH. So you cannot use pH more than 7. So this is the way how it get interact. You know, just for example, C18 column oil chain, silica C18 chain. Sample is there. Sample this hydrophobic, the carbon chain. If it is a phenyl group or carbon chain, it will have strong interactions. And if you come for C, we go for different hydrophobic bonded column is C18 column. It's C8 column. I mean the silica is linked with C8 and silica is linked to C4. So if you say sample and the C18 is having more number of carbon, it shows a stronger hydrophobic interaction when compared to C8, and C8 will show better hydrophobic interaction with the sample than C4 column. But practically in industry, C8 is a minimum, and C4, C2 and all it is not used, and because they show very weak hydrophobic interactions, and it may not aid the better resolution or the complete what we exactly require. So this is the way how the C18 column shows hydrophobic interaction. So it's a silica, it is a chain C18 chain. If you go for benzene, you can see that the particular benzene shows a hydrophobic interaction C8 chain. The here are same, they are chain. See, this compound is having COO group, so it's a polar group. So this polar group may not have interaction with this chain because of the carbon, but only this that the carbon chain which presents sample only it shows your interaction with the hydrophobic interactions. So here, in case of reverse chromatography, if a compound is highly polar in nature, so like COO, compound is highly polar in nature, this may not show complete interaction with the column. So here, this is a kind of example. It's normal phase chromatography, reverse phase chromatography. In case of low polarity mobile phase, we have in normal phase chromatography automatically we have to use low polarity because normal phase already stationary phase is polar in nature. The mobile phase will be low polarity or non-polar nature. So automatically the compound A is elute first because A is elute first, B is and C is the same compound. If you try to elute in the reverse phase chromatography and compound A elute first, compound B elute second, and C is the reverse. So you can see the elution are also reverse in case of a normal phase chromatography and reverse phase chromatography. So now in this, how you are going to design which is a more polar compound, which is a less polar compound. In normal phase chromatography, the stationary phase is polar in nature. Automatically, the polar compound retain for longer time. It means, and this compound first eluted, it is a more polar in nature. This compound is a more polar. This is first eluted. Okay, it's first eluted. So it is nothing but A is a more polar in nature. Next is B. Next is C. Okay, and same with this elution order is here. And when the time goes up, nothing but this is the first eluted, is second eluted, and third. So here last eluted become first eluting. So it means nothing but the reverse phase chromatography and the polar compound is eluted first and non-polar compound is eluted later. So here this is your non-polar. C is out of these two. C is relatively non-polar and A is relatively more polar. So here what happened? How the polarity of the solvent is going to affect. For example, instead of in normal phase chromatography, instead of low polarity, if you use medium polarity, you can see that the peaks are merging together. So it means this is called as a resolution. The well separation of the compounds C and B is a resolution. Here it's a mixing together, nothing but there is separation, but there is no particular basin separation. So the solid polarity is nothing but as I told you, A is more polar than B, B is more polar than C. So here, as a result, it's a simple questioning, but when increasing the mobile phase polarity, the decrease in the elution time. That is also there. So when you come for your, for example, here, almost like your time is up to here, but here you see, when you increase your polarity in both the case, here you're going to reduce the polarity, here you're going to increase the polarity, the compounds are written in a very short period. So that automatically what is mobile, that particular elution time also reduced, the resolution also reduced. So the types of HPLC depends on. So here, what are the various parameters of an analyte to be considered to choose what kind of HPLC you have to choose? Whether you have to use normal phase or whether to use reverse phase or ion exchange or affinity or whatever may be the case. And remember, and before you go for HPLC, you need to analyze what is the molecular weight of the solute, number one. Number two is the water solubility of the solute, polarity of the solute, ionic and non-ionic character of solute. These all the four parameter you must study for any analyte before you start your HPLC. So here you just see, and based on the molecular weight, and it is a very low molecular weight, high molecular weight. You can see here, if your molecular weight goes more than 1000 approximately, you can see here even. And if your molecular weight goes up to 1000, you have to go for gel permeation and gel filtrations. And you can see that absorption here, if a compound is insoluble and non-polar, insoluble non-polar, you have to go for adsorption chromatography. The compound is soluble and ionic, go for ionic chromatography. The same compound is water soluble, non-ionic nature, you can go for what is the partition, either normal partition or what is the reverse partition. So that is the reason now more commonly in pharma industry we go for reversed phase chromatography partition. It is the reason we go it. The reason is you can see our particular most of our pharmaceutical compounds falls in this range. Falls in this range means and molecular weight is from 100 to up to here. That's all. Most of the pharmaceuticals comes under 100 to 1000 molecular weight. The compounds are not completely water soluble or insoluble. They are all what is predominantly lipid soluble from this region. That's why most of the case we use this reverse phase chromatography, the partition principle only is used in HPLC. So in case of adsorption chromatography, as I know you, the separation of the compound takes place based on the difference in the affinity of the compound towards stationary phase. As normal reverse phase. The lesser the affinity of the sample particle towards the stationary phase, faster the time of elution sample. Nothing but very simple. When a compound is moving to a stationary phase, and a person walking on the road, when a person is having a very good affinity on roads, we are not able to walk, automatically walk slow. When a person is not having a affinity or towards the road, automatically can jump and can go fast. The same way here, very simple here, nothing but lesser the affinity towards a stationary phase, the compound elute very fast. So here, very simple, the separation mechanisms. So usually the two compounds are separated only based on the different affinity of the sample towards stationary phase. This is an example where we can see that the blue color compound which has stronger interactions and red color compound shows weaker interactions. That's when the red color compound come into the compound. One is the red color, compound two is the blue color. That's the case. So according to what happened, there is a time difference between between elution of compound 1 and 2. That is a baseline separation that is called as a resolution. So here, as the time difference between the elution of two compound increases, it means the resolution is increases. And partition chromatography here, and partition means it's a kind of a distribution of a solid between two liquids called as partition. The same way here, the case of partition chromatography, both the stationary phase also liquid in nature and mobile phase also liquid in nature. So here what happened? So obviously it is the practical experimental requirement, nothing but both the phase will be immiscible to each other. Otherwise it will become one single phase. So instead the column, the stationary phase is liquid, it's a non-polar liquid, for example. Mobile phase is a polar liquid. When the compound passes the column, there is a partition takes place. So the compound which has more partition coefficient are eluted slowly when compared to the compound which is low partition coefficient. I mean the compound with more partition coefficient. So here the nothing but more partition means the compound which is stay in the column for longer time because the column is made up of non-polar phase. So this is a way that like a chart in chromatography, it's a kind of your chart representation in adsorption chromatography and partition chromatography. So here, how particular solids will get adsorbed. You can see the stationary phase, the pink color, and where the solid adsorbed on the surface of the stationary phase. But in case of partition chromatography, you can see and the solid dissolved in the liquid phase coated on the pink color coat is called as a liquid. So that particular is a liquid stationary phase which is coated on the stationary support or solid support. So here remember, and in this stationary phase, solid stationary phase, but here this solid support and this pink color is nothing but it's a solid stationary phase which is coated as a thin layer. So when a compound goes here, this is another liquid. This white is another liquid. There is a partition taking place. So the compound is dissolved in this particular liquid. So the compound which has high solubility in the column, that is stationary liquid phase, we dilute slowly. So now let us come for this instrumentation of HPLC. Instrumentation of HPLC. So here, and when you come for the instrument HPLC, and it's called a solvent reservoir, it's called a solvent storage bottle, gradient controller mixing unit, a degassing of solvents, pump, gas, pressure pre-column, and a sample introduction system, column, detector, and recorder. So it is a flow diagram of HPLC instrument, and you can say the solvent reservoir solvent 1 and 2, and it's a degasser which remove the dissolved gas from the solvent. Then it's mixing together, so depends upon the requirement, solvent ratio, both are mixed, and then it passes through a pump. The pumps flush the solvent into the pre-column, and it goes to the flow splitter, and goes to the sample injection port, comes to the analytical column, then comes to the what is the differential column. It's a nothing but a differential detector, nothing but it's a base, a flash collector, whatever may be the case. Okay, this is a just schematic diagram of any HPLC instrument. It varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, module to module. It is not a standard picture, but solvent reservoir will be there, pump will be there, column will be there, injector will be there. This is a major injector will be there. So the gradient controller, nothing but in case of HPLC, there are two kind of elution. One is a isocratic elution and gradient elutions. So the isocratic elution, nothing but flow of the solvent ratio, the nothing but the polarity of the solvent throughout the experiment will be remain same. For example, you are running HPLC for 10 minutes and you will be using the same ratio of a mobile phase throughout 10 minutes. You will not change the mobile phase ratio because once you change your mobile phase ratio, polarity will change. It is called isocratic elutions. To conduct isocratic elutions, the instrument may have only one pump. That is enough. One pump is enough. But in case of gradient solvent, for example, you're conducting your experiment for 10 minutes. First 5 minutes, the solvent ratio is 1. And the second 3 minutes, the solvent ratio is different. 1 second, the last 2 minutes, the same solvent ratio will be get back. It means you'll change your solvent ratio such a way the polarity of the solvent is increasing. That is very important here in gradient elution. And the solvent ratios are increased over the time such a way the solvent polarity is increases. For this you require 2 pumps. Definitely require 2 pumps. So here when we use your gradient elutions, when we use your isocratic, usually your objective, you're seeing one or two compounds are there, your mixer is very simple mixture, or the compound is having the having wide polarity range compound. In such a case, you can go for uh, isocratic elutions. But when it comes for a gradient elution, in case of the gradient controller containing instrument, so usually what's happening, but your compound will have more than five or six compounds in the mixer. Second, compounds will have similar polarity. In such a case, you require change in the polarity of the solvent during your elution so that this gradient controller is used when two or more solvent pumps are used for your such preparations. As I told you, nothing but see here, this is as I told you, isocratic elutions. Generally, in isocratic elutions, what's happening is methanol water, 6-part methanol and 4-part this. Okay, so here it's in this particular mobile phase, what is happening is, and you can see the compound 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 compounds. See, in HPLC, the number of peaks is equal to number of samples. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so here in isocratic, what's happening here is, you can see, and 8 more amount of methanol is there. Automatically here what's happening, the time is decreased. So here what happened, this all the 4 peaks are merged together, but when you increase your water content, automatically the peaks are moved ahead. So here this is a very poor bad separation, I mean poor separation, poor resolution. But in isocratic, when you use long time analysis, all the compounds will be separated. But to avoid this long time analysis, you can go for gradient mode. So gradient means we can see that over the period of time, the polarity is increased. Polarity is increased. So here all the 6 compounds are well separated in short period. But here you can see the compounds separated long time, but gradient mode, and where particular this is the rector is percentage methanol. So keep on increase your methanol content or whatever the case, and over the period again, once again it came back to the original. Okay, this is called as gradient elutions. So one of the advantage of this gradient elution is, and you can analyze many compounds, you can separate many compounds with our expected resolution in short time analysis. This isocratic system, as I told you, only one pump will be there. We don't require 2 pumps here. In high pressure gradient system, as I told you, we require 3 pumps or 4 pumps. In industry, you will have quaternary. Quaternary means 4 pump will be there. Binary means 2 pump will be there. So these are the. So you can ratio the solvent in each pump accordingly. Each pump will and that will mix here. It pass through the column. So here, this particular high pressure gradient system will have excellent gradient accuracy, and so 2 pumps, 2 or 3 pumps required. 1 pump per solvent is required. So here, in such a case, the online degassing may not be critical. So here there is a mixing unit in a system, HPL system, and it's called as a low pressure mixing chamber, and which uses the helium for gassing. Another is a high pressure mixing chamber, does not require the helium for degassing. And mixing of solvents, it is done by static mixer and dynamic mixer, and the static mixer is packed with beads, and dynamic mixer is it's the magnetic stirrer and operate under high pressure. This is nothing but simple example. And degassing solvent, you know the why we need to do degassing of solvent is something bad. It's all to avoid your baseline noise disturbance. To avoid baseline noise disturbance. So here reason nothing bad. When the solvent is flushed into the column with high pressure, with the high pressure, what happens if the solvent is dissolved? So the solvent get it does, I mean this particular degassing or this bubbling will be there inside the column. Sometimes this disturb your baseline, and so the detector performance are well disturbed. So here what happened, and you have a lot of error in analysis and peak illusions also. To avoid that, what generally we do nothing but we try to go for degassing, and we try to do that to solvent degassing with a different way. And the best way of doing your degassing is ultrasonication. I mean, it is done by ultrasonicator, which convert the ultra high frequency to mechanical vibrations. So here, what happened? And these ultrasonications, where the ultra high frequency are used, and it is these frequencies to convert in mechanical vibration. These mechanical vibrations, it degas dissolved gases from the solvent. Apart from that, you can also do with the vacuum filtrations, and you can also use by the helium purging, but you pass the helium gas through the solvent. Because the helium purging is not possible because the helium is expensive, as well as sometimes it is also explosive also. And vacuum filtration, it is not always reliable, but it is not possible because we cannot completely remove the gas by using a vacuum filtrations, and it's very difficult to reproduce also. So, as I told you, pump are the like in a human, how hearts are important. The same way in HPLC, pump is important. This is the one delivery a mobile phase with a high velocity, and you know this the pressures are the it is expected that HPLC pump should deliver the solvent in 6,000 up to 6,000 psi, or you can call it as up to 4 bar a bar. Okay, the both units are used, and psi as well as bar. And here, what happened? The pressure is not only depends upon the particular velocity of solvent; it is also determined the particle size of the stationary phase. So here, what happened? Not achieve still high pressure, high performance. Not only you increase the flow velocity of solvent, you also try to increase the particle size of the column. I means you try to make the column is a 5 to 10 micron per ml. So here, as the particle size reduces in the stationary phase, the resistance to the flow of solvent is high. That is also help to build high pressure. So that is, the smaller the particle size of the stationary phase, the greater the resistance to flow. So that hence high pressure is recommended. So here, what happened? Whatever the high pressure that developed in the column, it is not only because of the flow of solvent. It is not only because of solvent. It's not only because of pump. So here the high pressure they build in the particular HPL system, it is a combination of both pump and the column particle size. So here, that's why here the lower the particle size and well packed column as well as the pump, mechanical pump with a high flow velocity, that recommend a high pressure in your HPLC. So this high pressure is converted into high performance. So the requirement of the pumps on the HPLC pump nothing but, as I told you, that the pump should be able to generate a 5,000 psi, and pump should deliver a solvent the pulse free. Pulse nothing but the velocity of the velocity or the flow of the solvent should be the stable velocity. It should not be up and down. And flow rates ranging from 0.1 to 10 ml. So the pump should be able to deliver a flow solvent from 0.1 to 10 ml. Usually in HPL system, we require up to 2 ml. That's enough, not more than 10 ml. 10 ml is more commonly used for preparatory HPLC. And the pump should be capable of taking solvent from the single reservoir or more than, I think, the kind of your grading system, 3/4 pumps together can be used, and which can take up the solvent in the reservoir and able to mix and deliver simultaneously. So, what are the different pumps used in the HPL system? One is a displacement pumps, a reciprocating pump, and pneumatic pump. Three type of pumps I am considering itself. The most commonly pump is reciprocating pump, deliver a solvent high capacity, and pneumatic pump cannot do, and displacement pump also cannot do that. Pump A, pump B. So this is the displacement pump. It is consists of a large and syringe-like chamber, a plunger activated by a screwdriver mechanism powered by a stepping motor, and it is also called as, remember, screw-driven syringe pump. It's called as displacement pump. This example for, because why am I taking this instrument for nothing but many questions come part in your GPAT. So the displacement pump also called a screw-driven pump, and the advantage thing that and this flow, they produce a flow that tends to be independent of viscosity and back pressure, but the disadvantage thing that it has a limited solvent capacity, and considerably it is inconvenient when solvent must be changed. So when you want to change the solvent, it is inconvenient. So that displacement pumps are not used nowadays. It's a picture of a displacement pump. The reciprocating pump, nothing but its pump transmits the alternative pressure to the solvent via flexible diaphragm, which is done hydraulically pumped by a reciprocating pump. The only thing is that the produce a pulse flow, which is a damped because of the pulse appear to you based on noise and chromatograph. And so, as I told you, the major disadvantage of this reciprocating mechanical pump is it produces a pulse flow. But now this is the one used in case of our HPLC, but they try to use either they remove their particular pulse by using dampener, or they use a dual pump. That dual pump heads are elliptical cam to minimize such pulsations. It's a plunger. It's called as plunger reciprocating pump. Example. The motor is a piston based. The piston based. That's why we called it mechanical piston based. So there are two kind of 550 ml move up and down. It's move up and down. Automatically, what happens? The oil base is taken up and it is flushed the outside. It's a reciprocating pump, as I told you earlier. Solvent pump back upon the piston based, and it has a small internal volume, 35 to 400 microliter, and it can give the advantage of this pump, as I told you. The disadvantages can pass the mobile phase with pulse, but here it has high output pressure up to 10,000 psi. It has a small internal volume, as I told you, advantaging, but output pressure up to 10,000 psi. It is more suitable for adaptation to the gradient elutions, large solvent capacities, constant flow rates, largely depend on column back pressure and solvent viscosity. So to conclude, this piston-based or reciprocating pumps are more commonly used. Advantage but can give up to pressure of 10,000 psi. It has a small internal volume, and the disadvantage only the pulse flow that can be managed by using dual piston pump or dampers. Pneumatic pumps, it is like your pressure, the use of the pressure produced by the gas cylinder. It has a limited capacity of solvent. So now let us come for the column, HPLC column. There are various columns that can be used in HPLC. They are a God column, derivatizing column, capillary column, fast column, analytic column, preparatory columns. The God column, nothing but it's a kind of a small column placed before the analytical column. The reason the God, nothing but it's kind of protection, and this particular God column, it is used to protect the damage of the main column or analytical column. And so this column, the God column, nothing but it's a kind of filter. It removes the poisons and toxic substance that are expected to damage your analytical column. That is the so here the compounds and ions that could ultimately cause baseline drift, decrease resolution, decrease sensitivity, and create false peak, that are all removed by using a God column. So the or sometimes the particular column, the compounds or particles that are expected to clock the separating column to block the main column. If that is also filtered through guard column. Finally, the guard column nothing but it's a kind of filter that removes all the toxic substances that are expected to damage your analytical column. And that's why even sometimes the compound that is expected to precipitate the mobile phase or the compound that may coagulate with the main analyte. And so here, that's why here these are called as guard column. And derivatizing column, the derivatizing involves a chemical reaction between an analyte and reagent to change the chemical and physical property of the column. There are four main use of derivatization in HPLC. So here, why we use derivatization in HPLC? Remember, you might have studied derivatization only in GC. Remember, the derivatization is a general terminology. It is there everywhere, any analytic technique. It is also there in HPLC. So more commonly, even HPLs also they do derivatization, and it is to improve the detectability, to change the molecular structure or polarity of the analyte for better chromatography, or to change the matrix for the better separation, or to stabilize the sensitive analyte. These are the various four different of objectives why we do derivatization HPLC. That column is called a derivatization column. So sometimes this derivatization can be done two way. One is called the pre and post column derivatization. Sometimes before the sample is passed through column, we do the derivatization called as pre-column derivatization. Sometimes we try to do after the column elution is called as post-column derivatization. So the same way like in a GC here also we do acylation, serylation, acid analysis, so many things. So only thing is a disadvantage, but it becomes a complex procedure, so act as a source of error. So anywhere, not only in chromatography, anywhere you want to see if you adapt derivatization for analyte, it's a kind of error. So it will increase the error in analytic technique. So you until unless the need, don't do any derivatization for analyte. So according to the analyte nature, you choose your better configuration. That's enough. So the capillary column, nothing but this is a column which are the capillary nature, and this diameter is less than a millimeter. So here for this column, the samples are used in nanoliter volume, so the flow also reduced. So here only the disadvantage of the reason nothing but advantage thing but is a cost effective. So the column size is very small, sample volume less, solid volume less, all the case. Disadvantage nothing but it is miniatured and flow rate is difficult to produce and gradient dilution not difficult. So the gradient dilution is not possible with the capillary column. And there are different type of column, as I told you, micro bore and small bore columns used in are also used for analytical and small volume assay. Diameter of a small bore column is 1 to 2 millimeter. Or next is the fast column, and this fast column that is have the same internal diameter but not much shorter length than the most other column packed with a particle size of 3 micrometer. So it's very important. The fast column diameters are 3 micrometer. The reason nothing but this fast column length is less. So here, as the length of the column is decreased, automatically you have to reduce the particle size also. That's very important. Is fast column and conventional column difference nothing but for example, length of the column is 25 centimeter. The particle size is 5 micron. Now I want to convert to this fast column, this 25 centimeter, I want to reduce to 10 centimeter. What you do, you can do it. To reduce your particles, see here, the conventional column is 25 centimeter, 5 micron. Now I want to convert this into a fast column. The 25 centimeter column become 10 centimeter, but the particle size also should be reduced to like a 5 micron to 3 micrometer. So this ultimately increases the sensitivity, decrease the analyze time, decrease the mobile phase use, and increase reproducibility. So this analytical column, this is the most important part of HPLC, which decides the efficiency and separations. The length, as I told you, the 5 to 25 centimeter in the diameter, 3 to 5 millimeter. Particle size of micrometer is 3 to 5, and these are the very common. And LC column achieves separation by different internal molecular forces. That's all depends upon the nature of your mobile phase, nature of your stationary phase, nature of the sample. The principle already we have seen earlier. Preparatory columns are it's same. Actually, what happens only the length is 10 to 15 centimeter, diameter is 4.5 millimeter, packed particle with having 5 micrometer in the diameter. And the column for this generator 10,000 plate per column. It consists of the back pressure regulator and vacuum collector. And this is thing, but this back pressure regulator is placed posterior to the HV detector. It's very important here in every HPL system. There is a back pressure regulator should be there because not to protect the damage, protect the detector from the damage. The sample injector system, remember, there are different types of injector device available, either manual or auto injector sample. So basically, there are three different injectors have been introduced for HPL system: septum injector, staff flow injector, Ryoden injector. Out of that, now the Ryoden injector is more commonly used for manually. Remember, Ryoden injector are manual injections. It's also called as a loop injector. Once I am repeating, Ryoden injector also called as loop injector. And first to do the septum injector and stop flow injectors are not used nowadays. Only the Ryoden injector is used nowadays. I told it is a popular manual injector. It has a fixed volume of loop. That's why I told you that it's a loop injector, and it has a fixed volume of 20 microliter and 15 microliter and more, even 100 microliter available. So through this injector only, the sample is introduced into the column, and the position of the injector is determined whether the sample is loaded or injected. And that's why here you can call a load position and injection position. That is a 45 angle difference will be there for load position and injection position. So now we come for detector. So the detectors, there are different types of detectors used in HPLC. One is absorbance detector. It may be a UV detector, UV visible, or PDA, photodiode array detector. Number two is a refractive index detector, which detects the change in turbidity, fluorescence. If the analyte is fluorescent, you can use fluorescent detector. Next is electrochemical detector. It measures the current flow through the pair of electrode, on which the potential difference is imposed due to the oxidation and reduction of the solute. Next is conductivity detector. It is for the ions. Next is light scattering detector. Next is mass spectrometric detector. So the selection detector. So when do you select the detector? So here, this is, I just wanted to delete the slide, may confuse you. Okay. So next is, according to that, we come for the absorbance slide, absorbance detector. And this absorbance detector, the more commonly used absorbance detector, UV visible detector, and it's based on the monochromatic light wavelength which is passed through a sample or nothing but passed through a eluate, and based on the observance where you are able to get a chromatogram. And there are in case of your observant detector, there are a fixed wavelength detector which measure your eluate only at 254 nanometer. There are some detector, it's called as variable wavelength detector, which can measure which measure the sample at different point of your UV visible region simultaneously. So this is called as a refractive index detector, and you can see that lamp, the light is passing through sample. One is a reference, another is sample. There is a it's called as a refractions, and this is your reference detection. This is your sample detection. This difference is taken as a signal. But this refractive index detector is a universal, but it's a poor detection limit. The detection is very poor. It is one of the major disadvantages of the refractive index detector. The detection occurs when the light is bent due to the samples eluting from the column. and this is read as a disparity between the two channels, as I told you, that's shown in the figure. It is not much used in analytical application because, as I told you, the low sensitivity and specificity. When a solid is in the sample compartment, refractive changes will shift the light beam from the detector. The fluorimeter detector is all chosen only based on your analyte. If you analyze is a fluorescent nature, and you can go for fluorimeter detector. The excitation source passes through the flow cells to a photodetector, while monochromator measure the emission wavelengths. So here, these fluorescent detectors are more sensitive and specific. Students remember, when compared to UV, fluorimetry detectors are more sensitive. Fluorimetry is more sensitive detector and more specific than UV. So only the disadvantage, nothing but if your compound is not fluorescent nature, you cannot use fluorescent detector. So this is the kind of your theory, that fluorescence is a type of luminance when a light energy is released from the form of photon in nanoseconds from 2 microseconds. So here what happens when a sample is there, when the light is falls, what happens? The sample in the ground state goes to your excited state, singlet excited state, and it undergo non-radiation transition. Then after undergoing non-radiation transition, that electron is returned to the singlet ground state where it emitting the light. It's called a fluorescence in nature. This fluorimeter detector, as I told you, it is based on the fluorescent radiations. This is okay. So this is the like a fluorescent detector. The angle of measurement is 90. This is a sample. The more commonly used light source for fluorimeter is xenon lamp. It's excitation monochromator, and it goes to a sample. So here the fluorescence 90 angle. So fluorescent intensity will be very high at 90 degree angle to the incident beam. So then it's the incident monochromator, and after that we have photo detector. What are the advantages of your fluorescent detector? What are the advantages of the fluorescent detector? Advantages are sensitivity is higher than UV visible detector, as I told you. Selectivity is high because of the relatively few second fluorescence and compatible with gradient illusions. The disadvantage is difficult to predict fluorescence, greatly affected by environment. So remember that the fluorescence is affected by many parameters: solvent, pH, temperature, viscosity, ionic strength, and dissolved gas. So here, that is the reason the minute change in the solvent polarity or pH, temperature, viscosity, ionic strength, dissolve is all will affect the precision and accuracy of your HPLC analysis. Amperometric detector. This is an electrochemical detector which works based on the reducing or oxidation property of the sample when the potential is applied. In this particular detector, diffusion current is recorded, and which is directly proportional to the concentration of the compound. The disadvantage is something, but this data is applicable when your functional group present sample can be either oxidized or reduced. Once again, this is all decided based on the compound structure. So, mean it is expected that the compound functional group should undergo oxidation or reduction under applied potential. The advantage is highly sensitive detector. Electrochemical detector also very sensitive detector. This is a picture for the amperometric detector. From the column, the element comes here, it goes here, and there is a Teflon or a mylar space here, and it's a working electrode here, electrode, and it's coming here. After that, it's a detection will go. You have a place where the place will go undergo kind of your electro-ox redux and a working electrode. It detect your the diffusion currents and to reference and counter electrode and then based. Okay, so based on the reference electrode, working electrode, and there is a diffusion current is measured from here. It's so ultraviolet visible detector advantage sensitivity is high, is relatively robust to temperature and flow rate, compatible with the gradient illusions, and only compound with the UV visible observation could be detected. Additional function is dual wavelength mode, wavelength time program mode, wavelength scan mode. There are several other modes are possible for ultraviolet visible detector. See, this photo array detector, nothing but it is a recent detector and recent development in the UV detections, which operates from 190 to 600 nanometer. The radiation of all wavelengths fall on the detector simultaneously. So the resulting spectra, only the very important point to be noted, I think, but the three-dimensional plot can be obtained from PDA. Remember, the which detector can give three-dimensional plot? Response time wavelength is kind of photodiode arrow detector. And here, this is the one which can be more commonly used for the stability studies and impurity detection. It's all happening here. See the D2 or is lamp. What is that? Tungsten lamp, and the sample falls that gradient is there. This gradient positions with select your wavelength. Automatically, what happen? All the light which passes through the sample and it falls on the gradient, and gradient will rotate accordingly. What they're able to detect the observance in each and every wavelength. Recorder integrator, it's other things. So now is the three-dimensional detector. So now when I come for HPLC, and what are the various parameters? What are the various parameters which are to be studied in HPLC chromatogram? Number one is the retention time. Number two is retention volume, separation factor, resolution, uh, theoretical plates, and the column efficiency and asymmetric factor. And that's all about this particular HPLC. Now, and more specifically, that's what I just rushed about that HPLC instrumentation fast because I need to cover very important component of a column efficiency in column chromatography now. So that's how instrumentation, it is there in your textbook. We can go through everything. I just rushed. Now I'll come to the exact point. This column efficiency in column chromatography. Column efficiency in column chromatography. A column chromatograph means it's applicable to both HPLC as well as GC. I'm going to talk the overall factor decreases. So now let us come for the chromatogram. So I just wanted to speak about the chromatogram. And what is this chromatogram in HPLC or GC? The chromatogram is a pictorial record of the detector response as a function of elution volume or retention time. It consists of series of peaks. Ideally, the peaks are symmetric in shape, and it should be symmetric only. If it is unsymmetrical, the peak is not eluted proper. That chromatogram is invalid. It representing the elution of the individual light. So this chromatogram is a two-dimensional plot with the ordinate axis giving concentration in terms of the detector response, and abscissa represent the time. For example, x-axis is the retention time, and y-axis is the detector response. The baselines represent any time of period during which only the mobile phase is passing. The baseline is called as only mobile phase is passing. So this baseline is called as mobile phase passing. This peak is because of analyte. This peak is because of analyte. Now you can see the peak height. The height is called as peak height. The AUC area under the curve called as peak area, and this called as peak width. So here the retention time nothing but time taken for the analyte to elute from 0 to here. This is the retention time, maybe around 3 minutes. And this is the retention time of this peak. This is the baseline. So here, how we are going to do this quantitative analysis. And here the quantification achieved for any HPLC analysis based on the peak area. And this area of the peak in chromatogram is, it's proportional to the amount of the analyte. So here it's shown that peak area. So here if you see that this particular two peak also, this peak area is less, this is high. You can say that this compound is higher, this compound is relatively lesser. This is higher, this compound what is less. So here, as I told you, in any chromatogram, and this peak area, the area of the analyte produce the peak. So usually, and in quantification, remember, we don't use only peak area. Sometimes we also use peak height. So peak height also sometimes directly proportional to concentration. Peak area also proportional to concentration. But here, you know the elutions we call as isocratic elution and gradient elutions. If your elution is isocratic, you can use peak height as well as peak area. Both are as a parameter to calculate your concentration of analyte. If your elution is gradient elution, obviously you cannot use peak height. So the uniformly nowadays overall we always use AUC, peak area, as the parameter to calculate, to quantify any analyte in the chromatogram. So next is resolutions. What is resolutions? The most important thing in the HPLC is to obtain an optimum resolution in minimum time. That's very important. So the resolution value is preferably it should be more than 1.5 or 2 to ensure the well separation. So if you go for the first chromatogram here, and all the peaks are well separated, we have high resolution here. The second chromatogram is a moderate resolution. These two peaks are well separated, but this is not separated. And here we go for here, these two peaks are not that much. So here it's a moderate resolution. This very, very poor resolutions. So here what happened, component completed baseline level, it's called as resolutions. And this resolution in any HPLC or GC depends on selectivity. Remember the selectivity is depend nothing but a separation factor. Number 2 is the efficiency. And next is the retention capacity. So what is this efficiency? The efficiency of the chromatographic is a measure of as it travels through the HPL system and column. And the chromatography peak would be a pencil thin line. However, due to the dispersion effect, peak takes over familiar the Gaussian type. So usually what happened here, what they want to say efficiency, if the HPLC peak is very sharp, it's called as highly efficient elution. If the chromatogram that HPLC peak is broad, it is less efficient. So the efficiency can be increased by the increase in the column length or reducing the column internal diameter. It's very, very important point to be remember how you are going to increase the column efficiency of things. Either decrease the column internal diameter to can help you to increase the efficiency of the HPLC or GC elutions. So these are the some kind of parameter where I have given you for best thing. Certain things I will remove it.